Welcome to Expert Profiles Atlanta, where Atlanta's influencers and innovators share strategies for overcoming obstacles and achieving success in business and life. Here's your host, best-selling author and Atlanta influencer, Neil Howe.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, and today my special guest is Don Dodds. He is the managing partner and chief strategist at M16 Marketing, and he has a passion for helping businesses achieve sustainable success. Well, if you have done any kind of searching for web design or SEO in and around the Atlanta area, you will see M16 Marketing pop up all the time. They're definitely one of the top companies in Atlanta, and very happy to be learning from and talking with Don Dodds today. Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us on. We're really excited today to be able to chat with you and share whatever we can with the community.
Well, give us a little bit of your background. Tell us, what got you started as an entrepreneur and, started in this marketing industry.
Sure. So my entrepreneurial efforts started when I was a young man. I was a kid, probably 13, 14 years old. I had my first car washing business. It was a venture that I saw an opportunity and had an opportunity to just get a couple of guys, family members, and organize a little car wash. And I started from there. So I started to generate some capital and saw that there was real opportunity to really build something. I actually never even knew what the word entrepreneur was, but I liked the feeling of working for myself and helping other people to grow. So that got me really excited. And then I read a book by our current president. I read a book called The Art of the Deal. And that book really fired me up with the idea about thinking big and achieving big things and getting things done. Just, sort of walking in great confidence and making sure that you're on top of your game to be able to help others do something great. So it all started there. When I went to college, and after college, I had a really great professor who said to me, "Hey, you should really check out this whole internet thing." And that whole internet thing for me at the time was not something that I was very excited about. I didn't really know anything about the internet. This was early 90s. Okay, so the first time I actually got on the internet, it was a blue screen and, little text here and there, no images or anything like that. Very rudimentary. But it was fascinating to me as I started to connect with other people from other parts of the world that I didn't know. And before that, I was doing that only via phone. So that was pretty exciting. I started teaching myself HTML, and at the time it was Internet Explorer and Netscape. And so I really started to learn about the differences and how that worked. So I'm really dating myself now, right? I've been in this business now for about 21 years or so. And one of the things that really got me moving in a fast sort of rocket ship type of trajectory was when I moved to Atlanta in 1997. I got a deal with Bell South, and I had an opportunity to really hone some basic web design skills. And then I later sold that company. So I sold that company after I started developing some e-commerce, more sophisticated applications beyond basic web design. And so that really helped us to spur on to a new level, because I had an opportunity again to sell my first business. And that really spoke volumes about the potential.
Yeah, really get a little bit of backing to start something new. So with M16 Marketing now, when did you start that? How long's that been a company?
So sure. Once I closed out that first business, I did a lot of independent consulting. I was a Microsoft developer for about 9 years. And so part of what I noticed was people initially were pushing back on the whole idea, websites aren't that important. They're not going to be around. The internet's kind of a fad. That was the initial thinking. And then everyone wanted a website, right? But everybody wanted a website without much purpose. It was just, hey, we need a website, so let's put one up. A lot of application development started at that time. I was doing a lot of that, a lot of consulting, and I saw a big hole, a big gap where people were not really doing any kind of strategy. So it was more, focused on let's get design done, let's get the development done, just to say we have a presence. But people were saying, hey, this isn't really impacting our bottom line. And so I started to think strategically about what could be done to actually help someone grow a business. So my focus then became on really building relationships and innovating and helping businesses grow, but with a strategic plan in mind. So everything we do now is based on strategy. So to answer your question specifically, M16, the formula for M16 started to come together at the end of 2012, and the company was officially launched in January of 2013. So that's after many years of independent consulting and, again, working as a Microsoft developer, just stepping into that space where we saw a big gap was missing and trying to fill that void. And I think we've been able to do that pretty successfully as we continue to grow.
Indeed, yes, there's definitely a problem. It's, people wanted a website because they were told that they needed a website, but without having a purpose for it and, driving traffic and getting leads, it's like having a store that nobody goes to. So there's
Indeed.
Definitely a problem there. Now, back in the day, these websites weren't designed with SEO in mind either. When did you discover that was a big hole in the market and start incorporating SEO in the business?
So, Google came to fruition probably, 2004, somewhere around there, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that sometime probably in 2009, 2010, we really started to work on SEO very aggressively. So I would say it's been about 9 or 10 years now, and SEO has continued to morph and has continued to change in terms of what you need to do in order to be successful. There was a time where you could just do some crazy things like, make white text on a white background, and people were doing all kinds of ridiculous things. But now you really need to understand that SEO is what I call an art and science of creating organic value. It's really figuring out content strategy, figuring out what your metrics are, what you're looking to really target, and speaking to the audience in a way that makes sense. But it goes hand in hand with everything. SEO, user experience, web design itself, mobile-friendly web design, using a mobile-first strategy, all of that really ties hand in hand. So for me, SEO doesn't really work without having all the other components. All those other components are really critical.
So before we get into the actual strategy, tell me more about the kinds of clients that you help. Is there one particular area that you concentrate, or do you have clients from all different kinds of areas?
Yeah, we're all over the place. I think I'd get really bored. My team would be really bored as well if we just focused in on one area. So we do a lot in the financial advisory and wealth management area. We just finished up the Piedmont Park site not too long ago. So Piedmont Park is a client. Again, we do a number of attorneys. We do a number of medical schools. We're really literally all over the place. So I think it gives us a great opportunity to, dive in and help other people and not get bored in a space. For us, we like the excitement of having to explore new areas, including construction even. So
yeah, and a large part of what you do, Don, is to really get into, these different niches and have to understand, everything about their company, everything about their clientele, so that you can talk to them in the way that they need to be addressed on their website. Talk to me about the whole strategy that you have, because like you said, there's the web design, there's the SEO, there's paid search, lead generation. How does it all work together?
So for us, we play in three primary buckets: strategy and research, design and development, and analytics and marketing. Strategy and research for us, everything begins with really listening to the customer, listening to the client, and really understanding their needs. I think a lot of people love to talk, and they talk a lot about, well, here's what we can do for you. But if you don't really listen, if you don't take the time to listen, clients are willing to tell you what their pain points are. You just have to hear them. And then once you understand that, we jump into creating things that will allow us to help. So how do we go about doing that? I think the most important thing is part of what we call our discovery assessment. We really take a lot of time to ask the right questions, listen to the feedback, and then start to try to provide some space in terms of where we want to go. So for us, everything is about SMART goals, right? Goals that need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. It's not just, hey, we want to be able to do this. In most companies, if you talk to people who aren't really zoned in on the SMART goal concept, they'll say things like, I want my company to make $20 million this year. Okay, well, let's be more specific, right? How are we going to measure that? Is that really attainable? Like if you made $1 this year, you're probably not going to make 20 million next year. So things need to be attainable, they need to be relevant, and everything needs to obviously have a time base, attached to it. So that's how we go about really moving from one place to another. SMART goals are tremendously important.
Very good. And as far as the pain points that you mentioned, what are those pain points, and do most businesses have the same pain points and the same problems?
Yeah, I think it's going to really depend on the business. Again, we spend a lot of time listening, but the common things that we see: user experience, right? Too many call to actions on a page. You go on a page and there are like 5 or 6 call to actions. Users become confused about where they need to go when they drop on a particular page. So, not having enough white space, just crowding everything up. Not speaking to the user in a language that they really understand, not having the right color scheme even. If your users are particularly women, then you may want to skew towards a certain type of color. If they're men, or if they're older, if they're younger, you really need to understand that target audience as well. So those are some of the common problems that we see across the board for all companies.
And that's coming from a more web design place. What about the search metrics or the keywords that they might be trying to rank for? What are some of the issues with that?
So the same thing. I mean, generally, we have people who say, well, I want to be able to rank for keyword X. And we say, well, keyword X is, no one's really looking for that, right? No one. So we do a lot of research, but everything that I mentioned about design also ties in with the SEO piece and the keyword research. You can have the right keywords and throw them on the page, but if they're not positioned properly, if the sizing isn't right, if you're not, again, speaking the right messaging, the right call to action, none of it's really going to matter. It's not going to be as effective as it could be. So that design piece, the user experience piece, the keyword research, and speaking to the target audience in a way that they really understand is really, really important.
So for most companies, that you sit down with them, you have that strategy session. Do you find that most companies have a strategy that they're trying to work on, and it's just not working, or do they not really have one?
So here's some interesting data that I found. 50% of businesses have no strategy, right? No digital marketing strategy at all. 50%. And only 13% of those businesses actually execute their strategy. So that's the big problem there, just not having a strategy. And then the other part is, okay, if you have a strategy, you don't really execute it. We focus on helping companies to plan, implement, and execute their strategy. And there's specific ways that you can do that. They need to be deliverables. Most companies aren't putting together an engagement strategy. What does that look like? So we spend a lot of time talking about, again, engagement strategy. When someone comes to the website, what do you want that experience to be like? Most people, when they're looking for information, it's about an education process. So we take them from education to engagement to earning trust, credibility, and then ultimately, ending up with a conversion or sale.
And what does that do for the bottom line? Once you have a strategy that they're working towards, what kind of difference does that make to the business?
Yeah, generally across the board, we see conversions that are minimum 250% when we employ our engagement strategy. We have lots of case studies where the conversion rate is, 800%, in some cases even more, because a lot of what we do is not just when we think about digital marketing, it's not just the SEO piece. So we blend SEO with pay-per-click, Google AdWords. We do a little bit of social media as well to complement that, but it really depends on what the company's needs are. So taking digital marketing as a holistic approach is really important.
So, we've been talking a lot about the actual website when, people find the website, some of those trust triggers and credibility things that help out with conversion. But what about getting people to the website in the first place? I know you've done a great job of it yourself with your business showing up on the map and organic for your main keywords. How are you able to do that?
Well, again, it all comes down to strategy. Everything comes down to understanding who the target audience is, picking the right keywords. Sometimes we have keywords that have a higher volume, some have lower volume. We try to pick a mix of both high and low volume keywords to make sure that we have an opportunity to penetrate. We go for some quick wins so that, the lower volume sometimes will give us an opportunity. Less competitive keywords gives us an opportunity to really get in and start showing some results and really building that trust and relationship with the client. So once they start seeing those results, we're able to, pull in volume. So how we make that happen, again, people talk a lot about link building. Link building is important, but relationship building is even more important. It's really, setting companies up to be an expert in the space that they're in. So if you're in the construction business, you want to be an expert. How are you perceived as an expert? Maybe you need to talk to Neil, right? Talk to you and make sure that the authority piece is in place, but also create right kinds of blogs, white papers, other documentation, video. All of that helps to solidify you as an expert, and you really need to understand, who you are and what you're doing, or who your customer is, what they want, and what they need.
So if you're in a competitive market, and I'm sure Atlanta web design is a competitive market and competitive keyword, how are you able to, rise to the top, and how long does it take to really, get those top spots for a competitive industry like that?
So generally, I would say that it probably takes, a year or so of work and content, and it's not an overnight journey by any means. SEO is a long-term game. It requires patience. It requires diligence, and a real understanding of what is changing, right? What people are looking for, and being able to speak to that, to be able to ultimately help people. It can't just be, let's get some links and throw up some content. It's, what are you doing to really help people once they are able to click on your site? So if your site ends up not being very good and people can't find any information, it's going to be hard for you to increase your ranking.
So talk to me what's important about that. Is it people staying on your site for a length of time, what they're clicking on? What really signs does Google look for to say, okay, this is the best result that I can show?
Sure. So there are a couple of things. If you typed in, for example, responsive web design Atlanta, you'll see a snippet that actually is highlighted from our responsive web design services page. And that snippet comes from, having enough content that clearly explains what it is responsive web design is, and who we are uniquely positioned to be able to do that. So that rich snippet is going to show up. You just have to really understand things like click-through rate, things like conversion rate. Those things are all important as well. So if someone's, ends up coming to your page, and let's say, the algorithm is always an interesting thing to watch. We watch changes daily as things happen. Sometimes the changes are very big. Sometimes the changes are very small. But when we see those changes, we can literally see, what we call the little Google bounce, where you may bounce up 1 and bounce up 2. But over time, if you're looking at that and you understand what to look for, then you can sort of stabilize things over a period of time. Sometimes changing a sentence causes us to go up, causes us to go down. And we look at that very carefully. We're able to monitor that and make the necessary changes to show up, for example, in a rich snippet, like we do.
So what would you say are the best practices for somebody that is, trying to get their site up there in the search engines for the keywords? What are the most important things for them to be doing?
So I would say, register on Google Maps is very important. Sharing your content on social media, also very important. Doing the right kinds of research, SEMrush is a tool that we use. We love, we highly recommend it. Obviously, link building is important. Building relationships is really important. And then measuring that. I think it's really important to measure what's going on. The only way for you to test your effectiveness. So if, for example, you see, if you're in your Google Analytics and you're seeing that your bounce rate is really high on a particular page, that means people are leaving that page pretty quickly. They're not finding what they want. They may be going to another site, or maybe just discarding you altogether. That kind of effect is going to cause the value of your page to decrease. And so you need to make sure that content is tweaked in order to provide relevant information to the user. Because ultimately, that's what Google's after. Google is after making sure that their users are able to get the best information, the relevant information for what they're looking for.
Right, and they're getting better and better at it every day. Well, every year that passes, they're getting very good at watching out for all those spammy things that might have worked 5-10 years ago. Now you've really just got to put up quality. Is that what you're seeing?
Absolutely. I think quality is very important. I hear people say different things like, oh, you need a minimum of 300 words or a minimum of 500 words. Just focus less on the words and focus more on putting up good quality rather than the quantity of words. Focus on putting good quality content and providing good information.
So what are some of the myths and misconceptions when it comes to SEO? What do you hear from some clients that are thinking about getting involved with an SEO campaign?
Sure. I hear things like SEO doesn't work. We tried it before. We hired a company. We spent thousands of dollars and never saw anything. I think a lot of times companies aren't doing a good job of helping clients understand what SEO is, how it works, and then providing a report. Providing a report on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis is really important. So the client can see what's happening with the movement. Then they need to really understand, here are all the things that we're doing to make this work. And I think so many people step into the SEO space and say, hey, I'm an SEO specialist. I'm an SEO guru. And they know very little, or maybe they know a lot, but they aren't really committed to helping, get things moving, to help the company grow. You really have to be committed to make SEO work. So it takes time. It takes some effort.
Yeah. What kind of time? I mean, setting expectations for SEO to work, what kind of time are we talking about?
Sure. So I think, generally, what I mentioned earlier is that you have lower value keywords, and then you have more highly competitive keywords. We take a mesh of both, and we explain to the client, this is why we're doing this, and this is what we're doing. The most important thing clients want to see is progress. And so generally, when we start a project, we try to get some quick wins right away. So within 30 to 45 days, we know that we're able to move them pretty quickly. Now, if they have no ranking at all, like if they are, on page 10 or something like that, we're generally able to move them up pretty quickly, right? We're able to do that within 30 to 45 days for the less competitive keywords. Maybe move them up to page 2, and then over time, maybe 3 months or so, closer to page 1, or closer to that 1 to 3 spot. Again, it just depends on how competitive the keyword is, how good their content was to begin with, if we're starting from scratch, or whether we're, working with an existing content base.
And for those companies that are thinking about SEO, or, they've heard things about SEO and haven't really been convinced, what would you say to them? What kind of things do you see that holds them back?
That holds them back from going forward with SEO?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just not getting results. I think that, when people don't get results, they are turned off by the idea about whether it could work. And people just need to understand. It's the same thing with a website even. So sometimes someone will say, hey, you know what? I don't have the budget to do for M16 to do our website, so I'm going to have my cousin do it. Right? Then they have their cousin do the website. And then they call, 3 or 4 months later and say, I don't really like the way that it looks. It just doesn't look professional enough. And it's not working. So it's the same thing with SEO. You have to find the right company who understands what they're doing, and who can really help you understand the process, and is able to help you work with that. SEO, to me, again, if you have a terrible website with a terrible user experience, the SEO is not going to work well either. I think they both have to go hand in hand in order to get the best results. Good looking website, good user experience, good content, the right pieces together that I mentioned earlier for SEO, pulling all of that together is what really brings the value.
So you've worked with a lot of different companies, financial advisors, wealth management, attorneys, the medical field. Are there any ones that really stick out in your mind that have just had great success? Tell me their story. Where were they when they came to you? What were you able to do for them? And ultimately, what was the outcome and the bottom line?
Sure. I mean, we've got a number of case studies. Some we work through agencies, so I probably am not at liberty to say all of them. But the one in particular, this guy was with us probably from 2012, even before the company started. He found me online specifically. It's David Centeno. He's an attorney out of New York, and I think he was doing his website himself and working on doing SEO himself. He had a couple other guys who were jumping in and helping him, and we established a really interesting relationship. And I said, hey, you've got to overhaul your entire website. Let us redo your branding. Let us redo everything. Let us work on your content. Scrap all the content that you have right now. It's okay. And so we were able to do that. As an example, one of the things that an exercise we went through was looking at the blue button that said submit for people to do a quick request for a consultation. And we changed that button from a blue submit to a green get divorced. And that automatically increased the conversions immediately just by changing the name of the call to action button. So it's little things like that, doing the correct A/B testing where you're comparing one page to another, one call to action button color to another, that makes the difference. That increased the business year over year. I think now it's up to maybe 800%. Revenue has increased. We've worked with him to bring on other attorneys because the company was growing so much, and now he's getting ready to expand into another state. So those kinds of success stories are the ones that really speak volumes for us. But where we really get heavily involved and heavily engaged. A lot of what we do, we end up developing really personal relationships with clients as well, as is the case with this guy. So we ended up doing a lot of business coaching as well, getting really involved in helping the business itself to grow beyond just the website and beyond SEO itself.
Yeah, and that's really important for the business owner as well, is knowing somebody is there with their best interests at heart, that knows their business and has the intent to really help them and see success like you've been able to do. So Don, if people are listening to this and they want to reach out to you for help, what is the best way that they can do that?
The best way to do it is to either email Don at M16Marketing.com, or you can call the office 404-919-6288.
Excellent. Well, Don, we got a lot of great information from you today. Some very helpful information, and most importantly, I think, is basically having that digital marketing strategy, making sure that you have those SMART goals that you are working towards, and implementing it, whether it's something that you can do yourself or whether you need to reach out to a reputable company like M16 Marketing. It has to be done. So Don Dodds, thank you very much for being my guest on Expert Profiles Atlanta today.
Thanks a lot, Neil. Really appreciate it. I look forward to hearing from you soon.
And to our listening audience, if you like what you hear, hit that like button and share, and we'll see you next time on the show.
Thank you for listening to Expert Profiles Atlanta with Neil Howe. To learn more about the resources in the show or to listen to past episodes, visit expertprofilesatlanta.com.